Three, two, one. What's going on, folks? Welcome to 34 Questions. Tonight, I have a very special guest. Rachel Scherer is in the building. How you doing, Rach?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing well. Want to thank you again for coming through, stopping by. I know your time is precious, and it's not always easy to come on and be faced with these reflective questions. So definitely appreciate you being up for the challenge.
Yeah. This is a great opportunity, honestly, to self-reflect and really get some questions that you wouldn't think to ask yourself. So I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Awesome. For the folks out there who are unfamiliar with the flow of the show, we do some intro questions, some warm-up questions just to set the tone. Threw in a couple icebreakers in there too, just for a little fun. And then after all that, we'll jump into the main portion of the interview where you choose a number between 1 and 34. Sound good to you, Rach?
That sounds good.
All right. Well, my very first question for you is, how have you been? This all started when we were still working together, and then fast forward to a year and a half now. You've been doing well. You've been doing great. How you been?
I've been doing really well. So my daughter is almost 5 now. So when the pandemic started, she was like 4, not even turned 4 yet. So it's really, really interesting watching her grow up in this kind of stuff and see how flexible she is. And also she's been giving me a really good opportunity to take my mind off of myself because she's a really great priority. Other than that, I've been pretty good. Yeah, can't complain. Definitely a lot of changes. But roll with the punches, and kind of it helps that that nobody really knows what's going on. So that really helps. You have a lot more in common with people than you used to, even though you don't see anybody.
Oh yeah. I think we had talked about this, but people grow closer together through a shared event or shared trauma, right? So hopefully the world feels a little bit closer together now that we kind of went through this phase.
Yes.
You had the chance to get that unique perspective though from your daughter. So what would you say from her perspective, or from what you've seen? How did a little one kind of take in everything that was happening? Did it feel like for her oh, this is normal, or did she notice things were really changing? Yeah, how did it happen for you guys?
That's a really great question. And because she was so small when it all kind of started, she adjusted to the changes really well. She adjusted to wearing her mask all the time really well. She was bummed when her preschool shut down for a few months, but we had a really great spot and they were able to open back up. So she really got to continue engaging with the people that she knew on a regular basis. And just with all the accommodations in place, like wearing a mask all the time and maintaining her social distance, even from her little peers who are also 4 years old. So it was really impressive how well her and these 12 other kids really adapted to this new style. I definitely feel like it was more stressful for the adults. But you know what? It's really interesting because I had a really great opportunity to stay home with her, to be home with her and not be working during that point in the pandemic. And I know a lot of people were balancing working from home and trying to raise their kid while everybody's stuck at home. So I feel really, really blessed and grateful that I had the opportunity to really dedicate my time to her during this phase.
For sure. And yeah, that's always the weird thing that I felt from the pandemic is that, I've been fortunate and I've been blessed to not really encounter a lot of the struggles that I feel like everyone's been feeling, right? And yeah, there's a period there where I just felt guilty, I felt guilty, damn it, it's not
same.
Yeah, right.
Same. I call it survivor's guilt. And then when you said earlier that people have a lot more in common than they bond over like stressful circumstances. I'm just like, we're trauma bonding. Like we have survivor's guilt, and there's all these big things that so many people are going through right now. Like, ooh, it's something. It's something. So when somebody cuts me off in traffic, I'm like, you know what? Fine. Do whatever you gotta do.
For sure. I guess it's kind of like enhanced your understanding of what other folks are going through, and I mean I think it's done the same for me as well. But for sure, before we go any further, I do want to jump into these icebreakers real quick.
Yeah.
This first one is a one-word spelling bee. How do you feel about your spelling skills?
I feel pretty confident about my spelling skills.
For sure.
Been spelling a long time, you know.
I got you, but it's been a long time since anyone really put us on the spot about like, oh yeah,
that's true.
Spell
that's
this
true.
question. Spell this word.
Yeah, we'll see if my brain still functions under pressure.
For sure. Your word is soliloquy.
Ooh, that's a really good word, and I'm gonna go with SOLILO. There has to be a Q at the end. QUIE.
Oh, you got it pretty close. You added 2 letters at the end, so you had everything except the last 2 letters. There's only 1 letter. Can care to guess?
Is it QUE?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was QUY. QUY.
I see. Yeah. All right.
Honestly, it's like the only word that I can think of that has a QUY like combination in there. So easy to get thrown off.
Yeah. Adding it to Scrabble.
Exactly. Words with friends,
Yeah.
All right, and one more icebreaker is a riddle. How are you with riddles?
I'm panicking right now, so let's do it. It's like a roller coaster. Like, let's just drop. Let's do it.
All right. Your riddle is, what would you find in the middle of Toronto? Outside the box, kind of, sort of.
Like Ron?
Oh, you are so close. What would you find in the middle of Ron?
O?
Yeah, you got it. It's the letter O.
Thanks for that clue.
I mean, it was irritating. I was like, oh, you're so close. You're right there.
I was like, what's a real word?
But I mean, I like that too. You could find Ron in the middle of Toronto as well. So for sure. Moving on to the warm-up questions. My first one for you is, what would you like the audience to know about you?
Great question. For people who cannot or have never seen me personally, I think some interesting context is that I am a parent, I am a wife, I am biracial, I'm half black and half white. I am in my 30s, and I'm a very empathetic person, and I really enjoy learning about other people and like the experiences that they go through. And I like to be outside. Long walks on the beach.
I feel you. It's always an interesting answers I get from folks, because like I don't. Some people will say that like long walks on the beach, and I'm always like, okay, I see you. But yeah, I mean, it's a dope way to kind of like, I guess, get that personality profile fit for a person too. And I was thinking to myself, maybe I could like do a guided version of this if I was going to turn it into a way of, for people to find their match.
Yeah.
For sure. You mentioned, you're empathetic. Is that something that you were always kind of aware of growing up, or was that something that kind of came later down the road for you?
Great question. I think it came a little bit, no, I think from a really early, I don't remember ever being like selfish or being told that I was selfish or really feeling like I didn't understand what the other person was going through. So when I heard stuff from, like, I remember feeling bad about doing things to people, which I think is a good step towards empathy. And I'm like, ooh, how would I feel if like I did that to me? But I think that, you know, part of that is how you're raised and stuff. So, you know, I think empathy can be learned.
For sure, for sure. My second question for you is, if someone were to pay you a tribute, how would you like to be honored? So if I was going to tell myself today I'm going to do something in honor of Rachel, what kind of act could I do in your honor?
Let's see. Go find some beach glass.
Beach glass? What's that?
Yeah, beach glass. Like when you, so I recently moved to an island in Washington about 3 months ago out of San Francisco. And I'm very fortunate to live right on the water, like right on the Puget Sound. And most of the beaches here are all pebbles and rocks and shells. And sometimes you'll find out little pieces of very worn out, smooth glass, really smooth glass. And it's just such a cool thing to find. It's kind of rare when you find it. So I just collect it over time. And it's one of those it is really rare, especially if you don't go to the coast. And like, I'm from Texas, so this isn't a normal thing for me. And in California, I'm sure there are some places where you can find beach glass, but not like in the city and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a special, unique thing to possess, and the experience of looking for it too, because sometimes you just happen upon it, but sometimes you set out to find some that day. So yeah. For
sure. Damn, you moved all the way out to Washington, huh? That's pretty crazy. That's crazy.
I live on an island now. And the only way on and off the island is from a ferry that you drive your car onto. Comes once an hour, so you better like run a tight ship if you got to get somewhere off the island at a certain time.
Yeah. So, are you living like in a small community, like a small town kind of feel with all the folks around? That's what's up.
Yeah. I always see people I know everywhere I go. So I always get the chance to like stop and catch up. My kids know some other kid and they learn some like terrible new way to ride in a shopping cart. I'm like, oh, great. Really good to see you. Yes, indeed.
That's what's up. Oh yeah, the beach glass. Now that you mentioned that, now I have this desire to like collect them and create like the stained glass kind of sculpture if I could, right?
There's so many things that you could do with it. You can turn it into jewelry, you can decorate with it, put it in your potted plants or whatever. It's nice. Yeah, it's just fun to have.
For sure. How you like in Washington versus I guess San Francisco?
Ooh, it has its pros and cons. Specifically, the island that I live on, there's no real food delivery services and that kind of stuff. So, a lot more cooking at home and not eating more eclectic tastes, which is unusual. Because I live in such a small community, I don't hear a lot of different languages being spoken, which I'm not used to. Especially like the area I lived in San Francisco was like predominantly just like non-English speakers, and so I really kind of appreciated that. And it also like kind of felt like I had a little bit more anonymity, a lot more anonymity in San Francisco.
I got you.
You don't say hello to people.
Yeah, like there's a lot of folks that have different ways of taking that. It's like, I don't know you, or
Yes. But outside of the social aspect of it, it's really green. It's really beautiful. Tons of hikes, tons of creeks. So every day I'm finding something to do outside. Coffee's really good here too, which is nice. It's very important to me. They have really good wine up here too, which is also very important to me. It's a beautiful drive between here and San Francisco. So that's another perk. So
For sure.
yeah, I like it.
You get that like extra crispy, fresh air, you know, being around all that green.
Yes. Yeah, plenty of oxygen.
For sure. And my last question for you in the warm-up is, on a scale from 1 to 10, how well do you know yourself?
Probably pretty well. I would say like a 8.5, maybe a 9.
Okay. How'd you get to that number?
I think too much about what I think and like why I think certain things. So I'm like, oh, I wonder what it was in my past. It's really bringing me to this point. And I'm making all these like, why am I jumping from this situation to something that like, why am I reacting this way? And now that I say it out loud, I'm like, ooh, I should think about other people more. So
Yeah. No, I mean, you know, I feel like I am in the same boat. You know, I'm a overthinker. For you, do you feel like that's more of a gift or a curse?
I think it's more of a gift, honestly. Like, while I say that I should think about other people more, I've had a chance to evaluate that statement. And I do think a lot about other people. And I wonder why did they say or do that thing? Like, what led them to make that decision based on what I know about how I make decisions? And how would I want to hear things presented to me in a way that's not going to make me flip out or overreact, and in a way that they can absorb the way I intend it to come across? So, like you said, a lot of self-reflecting, and I know that the way that you come across to people, just like in the time that I've always spent with you, that you do I sense that you do the same thing, because the way you talk to people is very deliberate, and there's really a slim chance that they're not going to pick up what you're putting down. Like, it comes across really very clearly. Your ideas come across really clearly, and that's something I've always appreciated about our conversations.
Right on. I think that's the first time someone's ever like explained that to me, or said in that way. Because honestly, I feel like I have so many things going on in my head that I'm worried that what my true meaning is not getting across. So I mean, that is good to hear that at least you were able to pick up what I was putting down.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that's why we vibe so well, if anything, right? Like, you know, not everybody can get along, but yeah, if you feel like, you know, it was clear to you what my intentions were, then, you know, that I think that's why we did have that chemistry at work, for sure.
Yeah.
And all right, we made it to the main portion of the interview, where you start choosing numbers between 1 and 34. I do have 3 levels: an easy, medium, hard, and you can flow through them however which way you like. Where would you like to start?
Let's start with an easy one, and let's start with number 9.
Number 9. What color is your energy?
Oh, that's a great question. I think probably teal, like some kind of like blue-green.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, good question. I always pick that color first when I'm like going to color. I color a lot with my daughter now, so like I always go to that color first. I'm like, where can I fit this color into this like Lisa Frank or like mermaid scape I'm about to color or whatever, you know. I was working into everything I'm working on. Yeah, teal. I also really like the color red orange, which I feel like is across the color wheel from that, kind of, you know?
Yeah.
So, in the way I imagine it. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong.
No. I don't think you're wrong at all. And, you know, it's funny because I think if it's green, blue, greenish, teal, makes me think of Washington for some reason. And
oh, yeah.
And the red orange makes me think of California. I don't know why, but
Hey, go.
yeah. How do you color right now? Do you just use, is your daughter using crayons, or you guys like to paint? Or...
Whatever we have basically everything. So it depends on the media, like what we're coloring on. Like if we want to, for instance, this past weekend we worked on painting shirts for her and one of her friends. So we did some fabric paint. Earlier the week we did some watercolors. We've done some acrylics lately. But if we're just casual coloring, not working on a project, then we'll just use colored pencils or crayons.
For sure. I'm just kind of curious. Would you consider your daughter a little artistic, or like the creative side, or is she more like logical thinking? Or yeah.
Great. I would say she's pretty logical. All of her drawings of people have all the people things. She's like, when mommy's working, she draws glasses on me. She's like, this is mommy working. And I have glasses on, like my computer glasses or whatever. And they all have legs and feet and all like the appropriate parts. And nobody's like, this person has purple polka dots or whatever. Yeah. So she's pretty literal. She asks why a lot, which is really kind of frustrating. I'm like, can you just not do the thing I'm asking you to not do? She's like, why? And I'm like, I swear you ask me that.
I think that would be infuriating for me. And I don't get angry that much, but I'm like, let's Google it or something. Ask Siri.
We do. Yeah, we have a Google like little one in our living room, and I'm just like, why don't you go find out what temperature it is? Why don't you find out what time it is? Go ask somebody else a question.
I hear you. All right, go ahead and throw me another number.
Okay, let's do 12.
12. When I ask what your favorite quote is, what's the first one that comes to mind?
Oh, the first one that comes to mind is a quote by, it's not even a quote, it's just part of a book.
Okay.
I guess it's a quote. I'd have to cite it,
Yeah, it's a quote.
And it's Do You Love? And it's in a Stephen King story called The Raft. It's one of his short stories. And it's a pretty scary story. It's about some two teenage couples, maybe the early 20s couples, and they decide to go out to this raft in the middle of a lake. And because it's off season, it's kind of cold outside. There's nobody else around, right? And so they get out to this raft and they're having a good time or whatever, and all of a sudden they see this thing that looks like an oil slick, but it's got all these colors that mix into it or whatever, and it just keeps getting like closer and closer and closer to the raft. And they start freaking out or whatever, and they're getting cold, so there's that element. They're like, it's so cold, I'm scared. So this oil slick thing starts getting closer and closer to the raft, and it like sucks them up and eats them or whatever. But there's no teeth or whatever. It just sucks them up and they disappear or whatever. And the way that it starts, so the colors kind of hypnotize the people, and so they want to get closer to this thing. And so it comes right up to the raft, and they're looking over it, and it's like, do you love? It's asking them, like, do you love? And they're like, do I? And they're like, drawn into this thing by that question. And it's always kind of stuck with me. I read that story when I was a teenager, and I was very, into heavy metal and like, I wouldn't say emo and I wouldn't say goth, but very like angsty teen. And I was like, yeah, do you love? Like,
yeah.
Sucked into the darkness. And so that's like the first one I think of.
That's what's up. Do you love? I mean, that is I think it's a strong question, right? Like,
it is. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's informed a lot of maybe how I think about things now, because I've been thinking about that quote for so long.
What's it called? Yeah, it's funny you mentioned you wouldn't say emo, you wouldn't say goth. Is it the scene or a scene, like, does that ring a bell to you? Or I don't know.
Yes.
I heard that also being
the
thrown
scene
out there.
kids.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What is the scene? What is
like
I never really understood what that meant.
To me, because I was in the like metal community of Texas, like North Texas, where I don't know if you've heard of Pantera, but Pantera kind of came out of that area. And so for me, the scene was being like 18, senior in high school, going out on the weekends to metal shows and like blasting metal windows down in the car, going to a lot of heavy metal band practices because I knew a lot of people in bands. And so that was like my scene. And like everybody I knew outside of school, on like, to be honest, everybody I knew outside of school was doing that. And that was our scene. We're like hanging out in the back of concert venues and stuff, like being rambunctious as like a young late teen, early 20s when things were simpler times.
Simpler times. But yeah, thank you for elaborating on the scene. And yeah, I'm just super ignorant about it. I'm not trying to attack no scene folks out there. I just really needed to get that perspective sometimes. But for sure, let's go ahead and throw me another number. Still staying on easy mode, or
no? Let's go to the medium.
Medium.
The
for
medium.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it, and then so I can pick another one from 1 to 34 again, right?
Or the same numbers. It's up to you. They have a
let's go for it. Let's pick number 9 again.
All right. What gets you up in the morning?
My daughter. She gets up at like 6 something every day, and she needs to be taken care of, so that's what gets me up in the morning, for the past 5 years or so.
For sure.
Yeah, somebody else's survival gets me up in the morning.
And I mean, if it's your child, it's like, super crazy, like even more so, right?
Yeah. But I intend on giving her a good day and all the love and like teaching her how to be resilient and stuff. So like, not just my child. Like, there's a lot that goes into just that one thing and like what I want to provide for her for the day. And it really it gets me out of how I actually feel. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. But like, let's do it. Like, let's get you some Cocoa Puffs and like, let's have a great day and da-da-da-da-da. Also, mommy's really tired, so I'm going to sit while we do all these things. Great.
Yeah. Since you used your daughter for the first one, the flip side to this question is, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, man. I think generalized anxiety these days. Living on an island partially keeps me up a little bit at night. Just because it's so different and it's so quiet here, and I'm used to cars going by my place, and so it's just a big difference. Like living somewhere else kind of, might keep you up at night. All the things I have to do, I'm like, oh, don't forget to go to the post office tomorrow. Like random stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still fresh. It's only been 3 months. I feel like it's gonna definitely take some time to get used to, being in a new place. I know for me, when I moved to Long Beach my first time, I felt super lonely for like a good 3-4 months, just because it was so new, and like everything that I thought I was used to is like, I gotta figure out new things, figure out a new way to do this and do that. So yeah. Kind of building off to, you were talking about your daughter. I want to ask you, how has motherhood changed you? Like for yourself, did you notice things that you kind of let go and like things you kind of built upon? So how would you say motherhood changed you?
Yeah. I'm definitely more patient. I'm a way more patient person. I have adopted the perspective that she's not great at peopling yet. Like this whole time she's been a brand new person. She doesn't know what she's doing. She is dealing with the same. If we've spent all day together, I realize that she's coping with the same day I am. And I have 30 years of coping practice. And so when she's having a hard time, I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, Me either. Like I don't know how to react to this kind of thing. So like let's work it out together. So definitely more patient. I think it has made me more empathetic. It's given me more sense or connection with, I guess, the wonder of the world. Like it gives me the opportunity to get excited about things that I wouldn't have cared about in my 20s. Like here we see bald eagles all the time, which is pretty novel, and it's weird that she's gonna think it's normal. But she's like, every time she sees one, she's like, eagle alert, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, let me get my camera. I just got this new camera. I'm going to test out this camera. Let me see if I can get the focus right. And so she really gives me like this window into really experiencing things more, which I think gives me more of like I get to see her see things for the first time. And I'm like, wow, like what is she seeing? And so sometimes I'll just like crouch down next to her and just like try and like see things from like that just that angle. I think is really helpful in perspective. Like, yeah, so I think I've just become more aware of a child, like of seeing things for the first time and really trying to understand things. I think, okay, this is the last thing I'll say, is that I think I've gotten a lot better at breaking things down into their individual parts. I have to, when I explain things to her and how to do certain things, I'm like, the smallest step, I have to explain each small step and why we do that step that way. And if I can't come up with a good answer, I'm like, why do I do this thing that way? And I like have to come up with something because she's very insistent.
Good way to put it. Good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. What would you say has been like, I guess, a difficult concept that you've kind of had to break down into like easy parts for her? It's just one example, if you have one.
Yeah. Explaining that everybody's body is different. I think we've really come into this interesting place as a society where acceptance of everybody has really been brought to the forefront. And like, you don't want your kids to say what could be construed as like embarrassing questions, like questions in public, like, why is that person in a wheelchair? Where is that person's leg? Why does that person have a cane? And so the simplest way I've been trying to say that is everybody's body works differently. And for example, I have asthma and she doesn't have asthma. So I just bring it back to that. I'm like, you know how your body, you don't have asthma and I have asthma? It's because our bodies work differently. And that person's body works in a wheelchair and that person's body works in this way. So I think that that's a very broad thing that comes at her in so many different ways. Like, this person is tall and this person is short and this person, she's like, I think that person is a teenager. And so I have to be like, why do you think that? Well, maybe they're just like, we can't assume anything. Ooh, another thing is gender. So we've been really trying to make it very inclusive, and we call people they. So like when it's not obvious what gender the person is wanting to be, you know, actually even when it doesn't matter. If I see a person out in public and my daughter is like, oh, that guy, blah, blah, blah. Like, say it's a person on a motorcycle from the back with a ponytail, right? She's like, that lady, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that person, da, 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 da. And when we read books with just objects that are gendered as he or she, we'll say they. So that it's like, why is this rock a he? Like, it's a story about a rock and a stick, and they're both he. Like, why does that? No, like, let's make them a they. Like, let's take the gender out of it. And I feel like it's just more inclusive too, you know. So that's been some really challenging things, just teaching her about people, how to be a good person to other people.
For sure. And I mean, you know, this new job I just started, you know, we're really big. Thanks to you, in part.
I'm so happy for you.
We are very, we try to be aware of how people want to be identified. So one thing for me is like when I think about raising my own child, like how much of, what if they end up wanting to either like, or I'm not aware of their identity and they become embracing a different identity as they get older. So in my mind, like I feel like it's a challenge, right? Like it's not to like put those stereotypes on them or anything, but also kind of like, well, this is the reason why I bring it up. There was a story, and I don't know if you heard this, and this might be hard to hear for some folks out there, but there was this child who was, who had both sexual organs, right?
Right.
Both male, female, and then the folks at a young age decided to be like, nope, you're gonna be this because this is what you're kind of like leaning towards, right? Like, we'll do the surgery so you'll be a certain sex. And then that was like a child at 8, and so when they became 13, 14, they got really pissed, and they have a lot of identity issues because they're like, I was actually the other one, like, why did you like kind of set me up to be this person that I'm not really, right? So yeah, like, what is your perspective on that, if you don't mind sharing?
Not at all. I think it kind of goes back to how many coping skills that I have and understanding how challenging it would be for a child to experience that. And like my first thought, not experiencing it myself, but kind of based on my history of parenting, is that it's what can I do for them to make their life easier? What can I do for them to make their life better so that they'll be a resilient person, so that they'll be really able to have a lot of self-confidence and like occupy their own space and inhabit their entire body and really be present. Life is hard enough. Like sometimes like you're just grumpy for no reason, and that's hard, right? So like having to deal with something so monumental as your own identity and being uncomfortable in the body that you're in, like anything that I could do to alleviate that kind of pressure and that kind of, inner tumult, like that would be my priority. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that case, and being an overthinker, it really, like, I have no idea what would be the best thing, like I don't know who the parents are, and I will hope to think that they were like really feeling like they were making the best decision for their child at the time, right? But how could you really know?
Yeah, parenting is a lot of experimentation and just being wrong frequently. I've never been as incorrect as I have been in these last 5 years of parenting. And that's been really humbling.
No doubt. And I mean, I think, that's the part of the human experience, the growth, right? Of like being forced to really be like, maybe I don't know everything. Because I think we go through a lot of our lives thinking we know it all. So
Yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. Is it time for me to pick another question?
Yeah. Actually, I was gonna throw you a curveball at this point, just to lighten the mood, maybe, perhaps. And thank you for sharing your perspective. I know it's not always easy to. But this is a fill in the blank question, and the reason it's a curveball is because I'm choosing it for you.
Yeah.
But your fill in the blank is life is all about blank.
Life is all about, I would say, finding your version of success. like figuring out what your personal version of success is and not being beholden to how everybody else defines success. And I feel like that'll help kind of guide you. Yeah.
Sure.
So
I'm curious, how would you define success for yourself?
it feels really lame, but I'm like, just being a good person, like being a good enough person to make other people's lives better in any little way that I can. Holding a door open for a stranger or whatever, like smiling at strangers with my eyes, like over my mask, like, right?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So just, doing what I can to make, leave things a little bit better than I found it, I guess. Not like in my personal like space, but like, as a person interacting with other people.
Yeah. You always kind of want to like, and that's the thing, right? It's like, what are we but like these balls of energy, right? Or like even after we pass, it's like we're going back into the universe, and so
energy can neither be destroyed nor created, right? Like, okay, so I watch a lot of Disney movies now, so I'm like the circle of life, like when we die our bodies become the grass and the antelope eat the grass.
Which, yeah, I mean, honestly, that's something that I kind of like, wrap my head around a lot, and just tell myself, at the end of this, like, all the people in our lives that kind of pass too, that their energy's out there. There's flowing throughout us, I think, and all the lives that they've touched. That's how I kind of like try to make myself feel better, I guess. Is that, yeah, they're out there.
I believe that. Like, I'll just briefly touch on this, and we might want to talk more about this at some point because I find it fascinating, and I think you might too. And it's called the quantum entanglement theory. And the theory is
get into it. You already hooked me into it. Go for it.
So I'm pretty sure the theory is that there's these very small atoms, all right, and we're all made of molecules and atoms or whatever, right? And so the idea is that there's atoms that are small enough to move through other matter. And because we as people are also made up of these molecules, atoms, and energy, when people interact, some of their molecules or atoms, I guess smallest atoms, can move through each other and therefore become entangled. And so no matter how far the distance is, one of the characteristics of these atoms, these specific atoms, is that when one changes, regardless of distance, the other changes. So when I think about twins going through the same experiences and they live like they were separated at birth for some reason and they live half a world away, and then when one thing happens to one, a very similar thing happens to the other. And so when you talk about how people are energy and their energy is out there and with us, I do think that, and this is just a theory, but I really believe it at some capacity, is that because we have those experiences and we're close to those people, and like our atoms may have moved through each other and back to us, and when it's just they're inextricably linked, and so there is physically some presence of that other person or the people that you interact with.
I am with it. I have to do my own research on it now, but is quantum entanglement?
Yep, exactly.
For sure. I will check that out.
It's interesting. It's a fun thing to think about.
Yeah. And I'll have a lot of fun thinking about that and talking with people. I'm curious, do you have any theories of your own that you kind of like, you have no evidence or but you're like, it kind of makes sense if you put these thoughts together? I don't know if maybe a question for another time, but
yeah, no, I think that's a pretty good one. I've heard some other wild theories, like the planetary evolution theory, where every I do not believe this one, but
Okay.
it's also an interesting one. That the planets in the solar system are all the same planet, but at different points in their evolution and time. So like Earth used to be just like Mercury, and then it turned into a planet like Venus, and then at this like time continuum that we're currently existing in, Earth is Earth, and then it turns into Mars, and so on and so forth. But I can't say that I have any theories that I personally, have come up with, and honestly, it's probably because I listen to a lot of conspiracy theory podcasts. So everything flowing through my head is like, oh yeah, that one time the CIA did this, and the one time this FDA did that. And I'm like,
I gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, like, even if you had one, it would just be a theory. Like, I don't know if I ever told you this one. This one kind of came to me during COVID, but my theory is I like to believe in, like, parallel universes, and like how if a decision is made, another universe is made that isn't because of the other side of that, right?
I think about that too.
So now one thing in my mind that makes me like think about it, like it could be even more, is so they say our universe is ever expanding, right? Like it just keeps going and going and going and never stops. But what if there was actually an end to the universe, right? And it's just like a mirror though. So like you have two mirrors facing each other, and it looks like it goes endless, but really there's like an edge that we just can't reach. So
man,
yeah, so for me, I'm all
that
like,
is really interesting.
there is an edge, and like that other side of the edge is that other universe or other parallel, like to ours. It just keeps going and going because of that mirror effect. I don't know, that's one that I feel like I need to talk to, like, a NASA person and be like and have them kind of like shut it down for me. But for now, I'm like, interesting thought.
It is, yeah, yeah. There's some fun thought experiments that I've kind of heard about, like just like that, where there's like something happens. Like there's this thought experiment where this person can decide whether or not to shoot themselves in the foot. And by making the decision to not do it in an alternate universe, they did decide to do it. So like both of these things did happen. So it's just like, it is a weird thing to think about, and like you are just like onto something, and I love that so much.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, we could all definitely, just keep going with all our theories or anything that you listen to, but I gotta let you know, we have about 10-15 minutes left in the podcast. Yeah. We kind of been blowing by. Thank you again for coming through. I hope you're having fun. It's been fun for me, for sure.
Definitely having a good time.
Awesome. Go ahead and throw me another number.
Okay, let's do one hard one, and let's do number 9 again on the hard.
Number 9, hard. What's the last sign you seen? Like, maybe you were looking for a sign, and, it could be something small, but for you, what's the last sign that you've seen?
I think that hummingbirds bring good news. And so when I see a hummingbird, I look out for some good news. And I think I often miss the good news because so much happens between the time. Like I remember being like, oh, a hummingbird, there must be good news coming. And then just like, I'm just in a blackout, like of parenting and like swim lessons and stuff. So I probably missed the good news.
I gotcha.
But those are my little signs.
Okay.
I think. Yeah.
There hasn't been like maybe you had a question in mind or something, and like a particular song came on, or
Yes. Okay, here's another one. So so one day I had a migraine, and I was listening to a podcast, and like within 5 minutes they're like, the only thing that would stop me is migraine. I was like, oh my gosh, me too. And then there was also, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was something else really specific that I was dealing with that day. And like also within that 5 minutes, they mentioned that as well. So it was coincidental enough that it stuck with me for like a couple of weeks now. And I wish I could remember what that other thing was. That was so specific.
It's all good. It's all good.
Maybe I wrote it down somewhere.
But hey, who knows? Maybe you'll get that sign again, you know, right after this.
Right after this.
But for sure. Well, we made it to the concluding portion of 34 questions. Before we get to the closeout ones, I've been doing this new thing called the 34th mantra, where I have my guests come on and create a mantra for themselves using this phrase. It's I am, I can, I will. So I am blank, I can blank, I will blank. How would you fill that out for yourself? Yeah.
I am capable. What's the second one?
I will. I am. I can. I will. I can. Yeah.
I am capable. I can overcome anything that comes at me. I have so far. I will continue to try and be a good person every day.
Sure, for sure. And if you ever need a reminder, now you got a little sound clip of yourself.
I was thinking that. I was thinking that.
For sure. All right. Well, closeout questions. This first one is from a previous guest. Shout out to Daniel for your question, and it kind of ties into the final question, but it's a little more specific. And he's asking 3 generations down the road. So maybe your great grandchildren are watching this, and you only had one sentence to kind of like let them know, for them to know you by. What's that one sentence for your great grandchildren?
You have everything you need inside you, and you can overcome your obstacles with the tools that you have.
For sure.
Yes, that's it.
I got you. And then my second question for the closeout is, what would you like to ask the next person that comes on to 34 questions?
Yeah. I would like to ask them, what's their favorite thing they've ever read and why?
Favorite thing you've ever read and why?
Yeah, like a magazine, a short story, book, cookbook, anything. Shampoo bottle.
Now I want to ask you, what's your thing, if you don't mind? Like
my favorite thing I've ever read. It's Little Women. Little Women, the book, is my favorite thing I've ever read. I've read it like 6 times. I'll probably read it a few more times. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is about it, but it's one of my favorite books.
That's hilarious, because I think I know about the movie, but
yeah.
Is it how's the adaptation? Is it like nothing like the book, or
it is like the book. Luckily the book is really straightforward.
For sure. I'm kind of, what would you say is like the lasting, I guess, passage or lesson, or what keeps you coming back? You read it 6 times. It must be something about that book that keeps drawing you back in.
Yeah. I think that maybe part of it is that I only have brothers. And so the dynamic between the sisters and watching them kind of figure out what they really care about and how they kind of manifest those as you see them grow through the story, like how they really manifest their experiences from their past into what they intend on doing in the future.
I gotcha. I'm gonna have to check it out for myself. And I feel
The
bad.
movie's fine.
The movie's fine.
Yeah.
For sure. And then my very last question for you, the question that ties everything together, which was very similar to the question Daniel gave you. So feel free to just repeat what you were saying, because I thought that was great, and maybe it deserves a second chance, second time, just to be repeated. But my thing is, 500 years from now, our descendants are watching this video. What would you tell them? Just like, maybe not specifically your grandkids, but just like the world in 500 years from now,
I would say learn from the past. Not with any agenda of manipulating your future, but for just the reason of, trying to do better.
I hear you. Like,
yeah.
Like your own thing, right? Leaving what you came into better than, how you found it, right? That's almost like what I think we should all strive for. And it sounds like such a difficult thing, though. Like, of course I want world peace. Oops, sorry. But of course we want world peace, but then what would that look like? Would the world be, kind of boring? I don't know. And kind of sucks to say.
Probably not. Probably not.
Probably not.
I think we'd have more fun for karaoke, more time for karaoke and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've been trying to wrap my mind around. But yeah, karaoke. Did I ever ask you what your go-to karaoke song was?
All right, it's "Forgot About Dre."
Yes, I
Dre
do remember. Yes, and yeah, that takes crazy skill, because I've tried rapping karaoke songs and it is not the business.
It's the breath in between the verses that gets me.
Yes, for sure. But yeah, any last things you want to mention before we head out? If not, it's all good.
Nah.
Some people like to plug
just
stuff
thank
in.
you.
Oh yeah.
Nah. Just thank you so much. This has been really fun. I really appreciate it.
For sure. And I'm super gracious that you came through, got to share your perspective and your story. And I only hope that one day you'll be able to watch this and be like, damn, that was me, or that's the way I thought.
Yeah.
Or, like all that stuff. That's what it's really for and about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again, Rach.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jay. And we'll talk soon. Yeah.
No doubt. Before you head out, I got to do the little closeout for the folks out there. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you for all the folks out there listening on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you catching this. Definitely appreciate your time as well. And then I got to say, because I have to say it, if you liked it, go like it. If you loved it, go ahead and subscribe. And remember to reach out, reach forward. As always, much love, and we'll catch you guys next time on 34 Questions. And then it fades away. But I was gonna ask you, if